Hello, everybody. It's Philip Lee returning with another episode of Civil War Chat. Today's episode is going to be about three topics. There's been a survey conducted by YouGov on whether or not people in the United States would like to secede with their region. Number two is Nicole Hannah-Jones, who was wanted to be a tenured professor at the University of North Carolina, who abruptly rejected their job offer and went with Howard University. Well, there's some developments on her that are significant. And third is the Hannah-Jones remarks will lead into the third topic, which is critical race theory. Well, today's date is July 16th, 2021. And if you want to subscribe to the show, click on the subscribe button in the lower right, and also click on the notification bell in the upper right so that you'll be notified when my future episodes come out. But first, let's talk about the YouGov survey. What they did is they surveyed people by region to see what their feelings were toward the concept of secession. And in the South, they were surprised to learn that 2/3 of the Republicans wanted to secede. They actually wanted to secede from the United States. And not only that, but half of the independents wanted to secede, and only 20% of the Democrats wanted to secede. So they were breaking this down by political party. To me, there are two significant things to draw from this. One is that I think the reason that 2 out of 3 Republicans in the South have give serious, or at least they respond to a survey by saying that they would like to secede, reflects the cultural genocide that we've seen over the last 5 years. It's been building each year, the tearing down of Confederate monuments, and the changing of the names of streets and schools and all that sort of thing. Even at Washington and Lee University, they're thinking of dropping the name of Lee, and even some wanting to drop the name of Washington. Yet up north, Columbia University, no change there. Brown University, no change there, because the Brown brothers were notorious slave traders. But in the South, everything is under attack. The culture, the history of the South is just under attack. And to me, it appears what's happening is that people are getting fed up with it. And now secession would not work, I don't think, because the United States has a currency, the dollar, which is kind of the reserve currency for the world. If the United States were to break up into component parts, not any one of the component parts would be strong enough to have a currency that would stand up as a world reserve currency. So what it really would invite is economic chaos. If the dollar is really not a good reserve currency because of all the deficit spending that we're doing right now in Washington. But I've talked with a number of wealthy people, and the reason the dollar stays a reserve currency, even though we have outrageous deficits continuing to build up our national debt, so they say there's no better place in the world, no safer place to be. Owning real estate in the United States, or owning anything in the United States, is safer than owning it in any other country. So that's what keeps that going. But in truth, with respect to the Confederate monuments, what's going on is that those things were set up in the spirit of reconciliation. Very few of them were set up in terms of wanting to promote racism. They were set up in the spirit of national reconciliation between the North and the South. And the reason that the Northerners really permitted it or even encouraged it is because they wanted to also promote that spirit of reconciliation, which became most obvious after the Spanish-American War in 1898, when the sons of Confederate veterans eagerly went into war to help the United States win that war. Then in World War I and in World War II, much the same thing. That reconciliation was necessary to help the country defend itself in military combat. But now we get to the point where there's such a focus on race that all the qualities of the Confederate leaders, such as Robert E. Lee, in terms of his his leadership and in terms of his I've said it before in other episodes. He normally slept in a tent instead of a house, and the common soldiers noticed that. And the way he after Gettysburg, he rode his horse out to Traveler to meet the soldiers that were returning from Pickett's charge, and he met them, and he took the blame personally for the failure and did not blame the soldiers. And a month or two after the battle, he wrote a battle report to President Jefferson Davis, praising his soldiers and taking the personal blame for the failure of the battle and offering to resign. Of course, Jefferson Davis rejected that. But those are qualities of leadership that can be inspiring to all Americans. And when the statues of Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson and other Confederate leaders were set up, that's really what America was looking to them for. We can have regional heroes that can serve to be inspirations for future warriors. Like General Patton in World War II, one of his Southern ancestor fought for the South, and I think was attended BMI. Maybe was a graduate of BMI. I can't remember. But all that is being lost now. And what is happening is that we're seeing extreme race, I don't know what to call them, hucksters, demagogues, trying to make everything in the United States revolve around race. And Nicole Hannah Jones is a good example of that. She is the author of the 1619 Project, which was basically it was a supplement to one of the New York Times Sunday editions. And it had a number of black authors. And essentially what they were saying is that the true founding of the United States was in 1619 and not 1776, because in 1619, that's when the first slave came. It kind of links into critical race theory, but I'll get into that in a minute. She blames whites for all the evils that are all the shortcomings in the black community, not only in the past, but in the present. She made an interesting comment with respect to Cuba. She said, Cuba, this was in 2019, before all these demonstrations, Cuba has the least inequality between the blacks and the whites anywhere in the Western Hemisphere. And that is largely due to socialism. She was on a radio interview with Ezra Klein of Vox, and he asked her, where do you find, racism to be least significant? And she said, well, she singled out Cuba because Cuba has a lot of whites and a lot of blacks. And she said, between the two, in terms of economic status, they are nearly level. And that's what she's striving for here in the United States. She wants to see equality of outcome. That's what this whole concept of equity is. You hear diversity, equity, inclusion. Well, equity is, an attempt to see to it that if she goes to school and you go to school, that you both get the same grades. If she goes into a job and you go into a job, that you earn the same amount of money. That's basically what she's searching for. And if she earns less than you do and you're white, well, that's because of racism. Now, if she earns more than you do because you're white, well, that's because she's an exceptional performer. That's the kind of racial model that she and critical race theory sets up. In other words, if you are asked if you're a racist and you say, yes, I've listened to all your lectures and I've read your books and I understand that I'm racist because I'm white, then you are a racist. If you respond with, no, I'm not racist. I've got some black friends and I don't see color there. And when it comes to hiring people for a job, I don't care what their color is. I care whether or not they can do the job. Well, even if you say that, you're still racist because you just don't know it. So you can't falsify the kind of racism that these people in critical race theory bring up. And Nicole Hannah-Jones is a great example of it. She wants equality of outcome. And before the recent demonstrations in Cuba, there she is saying, Cuba has the least inequality between the blacks and the whites anywhere in the Western Hemisphere. And that is largely due to socialism. That's what she sees socialism as a way to achieve that. Now, what we're seeing here recently in Cuba is widespread dissatisfaction, to say the least, among both black and white Cubans against the government. The government is exactly the way the Soviet Union was. The people in control of the government have wonderful lifestyles. They have nice homes. They have good health care. They've got all of that. Everybody else, you only get what's left over. And if there ain't much left over, you don't get much. And in Cuba right now, there's virtual starvation. What happened in Cuba was a spontaneous development amongst the public that, we can't take it anymore. It's been 62 years of this. And the men, we can't feed our families, and the women, we can't take care of our children. That's the situation down there. And it's completely false to blame it on the American embargo. The American embargo has been there since John F. Kennedy was president. But it is significant to note that Nicole Hannah-Jones, who is praised to the heavens by the liberal elite, or let me say the left-wing elite. I'm okay with liberals. Liberals are particularly, the classical liberal is open-minded to both sides, but the left-wing elite of today is not. But she is praised to the heavens by all of the left-wing media, all of the left-wing politicians. She gets the honorary, I don't know whether she got Guggenheim or some other type of fellowship, but she gets a lot of that stuff, as does Ta-Nehisi Coates. Both of them are way overrated as writers. But nonetheless, I'm just going to repeat again because it's significant to note. She concluded before all this freedom movement in Havana or in Cuba, that Cuba was the best example of a country in the Western Hemisphere that provided for equality between blacks and whites. Okay, so I really think that sort of says what I wanted to say, and I want to thank you for listening. And before I leave, let me mention, please consider buying The Causes of the Civil War by Philip Lee. It's $22 at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You can get it from me autographed, $25. Just email me, Phil_Leigh, L-E-I-G-H @me.com. And if it's here in the United States, it'll be $25. Now, what's important about this book is, in addition to looking to why the South seceded, which is pretty much all that the North, the academic teachers want to teach, is, well, the South seceded to protect slavery, and therefore the war was over slavery. Well, that's just for purposes of argument. Let's grant that. What this book does in addition to that is it looks at why the North chose to go to war. Why did the North not just let the first 7 cotton states secede peacefully? There were a number of Northern leaders, including Horace Greeley and others, that wanted to say, okay, let's let them go in peace. There's no point in having a union with people that don't want to be part of the union. But the North did not do that. And what you'll learn in this book is the reason they didn't was because they did not want to suffer the economic consequences of disunion. So you can get all that from this book, Causes of the Civil War by Philip Lee. Okay, that's our show for today, and thanks for watching.